What is up, you awesome permaculturist or permaculture enthusiast? Matter of fact, if you're a gardener or just anybody who's like, how do I do XYZ? You're in the right place. So behind me, check it out. We got the tub for the worm farm that we're gonna make today and show you a permaculture method on how to do it. Okay, so let's get started. This is a suburban size worm farm, even verging on the urban, but if it was for a farm or a larger homestead, we definitely want to use a larger container. There are many types of containers that we can use. This container is a sink. Now there's many different kind of containers that you can use, but a sink is obviously very good because it's already created to have one bottom drain hole where all the extra leachate or effluent may go and drain when we need it to do that. And it keeps the worms really dry and healthy and just like excellent. You know, you don't want them like wearing their beach towels all the time. This one we got at a big box store, but if you're remodeling your kitchen or you're remodeling your bathroom, or if you go to the dump site or whatever, you can pick up a sink somewhere and you can do this exact exercise with that. Now, I will say there's other ways to do it, you know, like we mentioned before. There are plastic tubs, 5-gallon containers, old water jugs, all those different ways. We just highly recommend the sinks. Okay, now with the sink, there's a couple things we want to do. We do need to put some type of filter that stops the big substrate that we're going to put in this worm farm, stop it from going all the way down. So in this case, we're going to use three of them, and you could use one or the other, but we said, you know what, we have all three, we're just going to use them all. You can use the big box store sink drain that's metal, which will eventually rust out. Normally we'd always be about heavy metal, but on this particular exercise, you want to lessen the amount of metal that's touching moisture all the time. Another one is a landscape fabric, or even a shade cloth would work real well. And then another one is a nylon screen that they use to stop bugs from entering into the windows. These are all good, and we're going to use all three. So the reason we get a sink is we need two things going on here. We do need a good amount of depth, and we do need a good amount of horizontal space so the worms have enough room so they can breed. Worms will eat their weight in food every day, right? So they're voracious eaters, and we want to fill this with material that's going to benefit them. And so what is that? The bulk material can be made up of a number of items. We can use cow manure, we can use coffee grinds that you can get from a local brew house, we can use shredded up newspaper. However, you don't want to use only that. It could become like paper mache, shredded up cardboard. We can use old leaves. Any climate that has a lot of leaves or any kind of woody material that's kind of halfway decomposed, we could put that in here. That is kind of mimicking the forest floor. Where do these worms live at naturally? Well, they live in the soil, or in the organic matter more specifically. So mimicking the forest floor is good. Now you'll notice when I put just a little bit of their bedding in, their main material, and in this case we did go with a mixture of leaves and decomposed wood chips or little pieces of wood, I do want to go ahead and wet it just a bit. Now since it is a sink, you can't really over wet it here at the beginning because we're going to go ahead and allow it to drain out. And we just put a bucket on underneath so we can capture all that, and it's almost like a quick like compost tea. We'll put that in the garden a little bit later. We got our bedding into our container. Now there's a couple things to mention here, and especially if you're in a diurnal environment. Here in North Texas where we are today, the hot, heated sun burns up here in July and August. We don't get extreme colds, but it does get cold enough where both the extreme heat and the cold will kill these guys if they are not taken care of. So one of the ways to do that, there's a couple of tips, but one of them is in the summertime, I do want to use the decomposing leaves and the woody material so they can eat that and not get burned up. Now in the winter, we do want to change it up. That would be the ideal time to go ahead and put the cow manure in. So you can round that up, put that in here, because the cow manure will heat up. And that's actually on the lower end of the scale. If it's horse manure, it even gets hotter, which we may not want to go to that range of heat because those worms will end up dying off. got a good amount of worms. This batch we got from Texas Worm Ranch. You guys make sure to check them out. The whole state of Texas, they will take care of you. And even probably if you're in other states, commercial worm farming is awesome. And do check out the video that we have on commercial worm farming. Okay, so these guys are rocking, man. They're in this bedding. We got a whole pound of them we're gonna put in here, right? We're just gonna lay them down right here on top. And then we're gonna put a little bit more bedding down on them. Every day, we're gonna come back out and we're gonna put fresh veggie scraps on top of those. Worms are a little bit more finicky, but that's why, you know, that's kind of the trade-off. They're a little bit more finicky, but this is the best fertilizer known to man, and it's all natural. It all happens in the soil for you. Now, there are a couple of different types of worms. There is composting worm, which we're using here, and then there's earthworms. And they are two different species and they both live in the soil. However, the earthworms live in the earth where the composting worms live in the organic matter that's on top of the soil. It is the soil, but it's a little bit different. It's that organic horizon. And the composting worms go through that horizon. They eat the organic material, and what comes out their back end, that's what the earthworms use to feed on, plus dirt, sand, silt, and clay. So it's a whole symbiotic relationship of different life and species in there happening to benefit your garden. I'm feeling really good about this mix here. We got the good amount of food. We're gonna go ahead and get these guys some rainwater. We don't want to use the chlorinated water. Kind of goes against the grain of what we're trying to do. And to top this off, it's not finished, we do need to put a covering over it to keep these guys out of the sun. So your covering can be made from a lot of different types of material. We're using a landscape fabric here. We just cut it to size. We wet the material down underneath it, kind of tuck the corners in here, and then we're gonna wet on top of it as well. And that will just seep through the landscape cloth. You can use different material. You can use even some shredded up cardboard or newspaper. You could put it on the top and keep it wet. You can use old clothes, preferably organic or cotton. And you could even use burlap sacks. I mean, there's just a ton of things you can use. The whole idea is to keep the heat from the sun and definitely the sun's rays out of it. So there's a couple things to know when you're talking about what to feed your worms. There are things that they don't like, and some of those are anything in the allium family, which is like garlic or onions. They also don't like too much citrus and the citric acid that comes in those types of fruits. And then anything in the capsicum family that has capsaicin inside the peppers, which would just not do good for the worms at all. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is when we are feeding these worms in the spring and in the fall and in the winter, in most climates, you can feed them every day fresh veggie scraps from the kitchen, what we call garden waste or agricultural waste. The products of the plant that you didn't use can go in here, and even weeds. But in the summer, especially if it's really hot, they may go dormant. And like I'd mentioned, you don't want to use the cow manure. You may not want to feed them every day because that can cause some issues and potentially kill off your worm farm. Another little tip for placement here is these guys do need to be in the shade in the summer, and they need to be exposed maybe even in a greenhouse in the winter season. They do like that good temperature, so that's why it's good to get a little, for a suburban site, a smaller sink like this. We're gonna put some casters on this and we'll be able to roll it in and out of the areas that we need to roll it per the seasons. All right, now that we got them all in, we've got them covered up, we've been doing our maintenance every day. Depending on how many worms you use, there's gonna be a time when you need to harvest. Now, what are the different types of harvest that come with a worm farm? Well, there's multiple types, and we'll just go over the basic ones here. The first one is obviously the worm castings or the worm poop. Did he say poop? And another is the leachate that comes out the bottom after every day. And then another one is the worms themselves. So let's talk about how to harvest both the castings and the worms themselves. When it's time to harvest, what we want to do is we want to peel back all of the covering material to one corner. And then in this corner, we want to put some food, some veggie scraps, fresh veggies right there underneath that piece of shade cloth or that covering right there. That exposes the rest of the worm farm. That's not a comfortable place, especially if they're top dwellers. So they're gonna search all around for the most comfortable place in this bin, and it's gonna be where that food is and where it's shade. Boom, bingo, that's the perfect time. You wanna take this material, and that's the castings that then you wanna harvest and move over to where the areas you need it. Worm farm, kid's bedroom, who knows? Now what about the worms themselves? Because they've at least doubled, if not quadrupled their numbers over this time period. And that could be anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks to 3 months, depending on the size and how many you started with. So guess what? The cool thing is, right underneath that shaded area, you're able to take that, put that in a 5-gallon bucket, and then redo this whole process again. Take those worms out of the 5-gallon bucket and put them back in. And if there's too many, half them and put the other half into your garden. You can see, like especially sheet mulch gardens, the benefits that we can have there with adding the worms. Awesome, you guys are amazing. I love you, you rock. Do make sure to check out schoolofpermaculture.com. Subscribe to our email list. Exclusive content already there waiting for you. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook, Instagram, all the social media stuff. Come over, take a course with us online or in person. We'll help you find a consultant, and we invite you to come do aid work all over the globe where we can install and insurrect permaculture in the places it's needed most. I love you guys, you're awesome, and we will see you next time.